I know Macron has like a big history of trying to show up Trump. Like he did it a ton in Trump 1. There was something about a handshake I vaguely remember.
I feel like he's trying to be like the inverse Trump, you know, like Trump goes for like the underage woman and Macron goes for the senior woman.
The cougar.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah. So inverse Trump, bizarro
Inverse
Trump.
Trump.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. He big, small guy, big hands.
Mm-hmm.
I know the sunglasses thing wasn't. It was because he had some kind of eye thing. He'd had eye surgery or something. But when he spoke at the UN, he wore like aviator sunglasses,
Yeah.
uh, which like was very like woke is back, dark woke kind of
Yeah.
vibes.
Yeah, he
Joe
was looking
Biden with
like
the
Joe
ice
Biden.
cream.
Joe
Yeah,
Biden was
yeah,
dark
yeah.
woke. Yeah. And of course, he looked like a Metal Gear Solid character
He
who would be called
absolutely.
Baguette Imperialisme.
Yeah.
Woke
Yeah.
imperialism. Um, and
Woke dark man.
woke. Well, yeah, I just think it's like people have been pointing this out for a while, but France really loves the brand of super woke while literally having African colonies. And I think
Yeah.
this week it hit its peak with Niger saying like the junta in Niger have like seized control of their uranium mine and haven't been sending it to France for a year, and they've gone like, yeah, we are at war with France. Like
Mm.
we're going literally to war with France. And Macron is there at the podium with his aviators being like, I am the wokest guy who's ever lived.
Yeah.
Yeah, sire, your subjects are rebelling as we speak.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm the wokest colonial overlord.
President Farquaad.
Yeah.
So it's Red Planet. Welcome everybody. We're gonna start like we always do with Tim. What was the most base thing you did this week?
Ooh, most base thing I did this week. Oh shit, I didn't really get up to too much. I mean, I'm pretty much working solid every day of the week. Let me think about it. Shit, I can't really come up with anything. I should have thought about this in advance. So probably the wokest thing I'm doing this week is this stream. All right, cop out. What about you, Soph?
I had a hub shift this week, and this is really bizarre. So, like, whenever we've talked about the Zad on the show, and we'll definitely talk about this in the documentary, but like, we just keep on going, like, well, magic is real. Like, just clearly magic is real. Um, I was doing my one hub shift that I have this month, and it's like an off hours one. And Jay and Issa from the Zad, our hosts from the Zad, who wrote the book that inspired us to go over there and make the documentary happened to be walking past, even though they live in a commune in France, happened to be walking past the hub and recognized me and came in for tea. And it was just a really sweet time. Yeah, just an unbelievable coincidence. I think Mule, did I text you? Gnomes are real. Magic is
Yeah,
real. Gnomes are real. Everything's
yeah.
real. Um,
You
that might have
said
been
that
about.
you said you had to get someone to take a picture because if you'd have just texted me saying the things that you were saying, I would have thought you were having an episode, which is true.
It's fair.
Yeah.
I say concerning stuff sometimes. I need to back it up with hard claims. Yeah, it was just like a bizarre and really heartening coincidence. Just really lovely to see them. I'm sure we're gonna go visit sometime soon. And I can't wait to show them the documentary as well. That's been my week. I'm also like winding up towards the next trainings for the hub. I'm in the like trainers for the next cohort of volunteers, and we are currently in the process of restructuring all our trainings, just like I don't know, like we're refocusing one, for example, to be more about like the types of people who come into the hub, and we'll cover in one session like the kind of tools and best protocol for interacting with like sex workers, homeless people, trans people. Like, Mule, what is the most base thing you've done this week?
Well, I have been working very, very hard. I have just been streaming and writing and trying to finish my new video for this year, and I haven't really had much chance to do any base stuff. However, what I am planning on doing, this isn't necessarily based, but it's kind of got like a bit, it's got a little bit of base stuff it's kind of sounds based. If I just say it, if I hadn't said any of this and I'd have just said it and then not explained what it is, it would have sounded way more based. It doesn't matter. I've over explained it now. It's a cop out. I'm joining a Cuban salsa class, which is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with helping Cuban liberation. It's literally just like some people teaching Cuban salsa. I don't even think they're Cuban. Yeah, no, nothing. I didn't do anything. Anyway, we want to know what bass thing you've done. If you want a much better based segment of Red Planet, then you can write into us and you can message us saying what bass things you've been doing by messaging us on Twitter, on Instagram, or TikTok, or sending an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and your pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. But guess what? It is now time for us to do the news. Soph, why don't you tell us about some great news, a great bit of progress from the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the biggest pieces of news going on in the UK at the moment. My stories are all going to be like in the court system this week, but this is positive, good news in the courts. The Palestine Action prescription has definitively been found unlawful by the UK courts. This is big. It should be like the prescription is something that the government does. Like, that's the government's personal list of who is and isn't a terrorist. And so it's not that hasn't been automatically undone, but the court has said you should undo that. That's our legal opinion, and it's not legal for you to be doing that. More specifically, Dame Victoria Sharp, one of the High Court judges who ruled on the appeal, said the prescription was disproportionate. She further explained, quote, a very small number of Palestine Action's activities amounted to acts of terrorism within the definition of Section 1 of the 2000 Act. If people aren't familiar with the details of this, there was talk of one of the Fulton 24 attacking someone with a sledgehammer, and this being like the pivotal thing that should get them reclassified as a terrorist organization. And firstly, the body cam footage of that is now available because of the trial process moving forward, and that person was one of the people we talked about last week who has not been found guilty. And secondly, like one person doing that is not the same as necessarily like a terrorist organization, even if that were, very clear. This is like to remind people, Palestine Action was prescribed alongside, let me check my notes here, the Maniacs Murder Club and the Russian Imperial Movement, two far right, very violent terrorist organizations, and just like it makes it very obvious how legislators were waiting for the moment they could say, look, this is clearly terrorism. We must prescribe Palestine Action if they were looking at that one instance of someone who I don't know a legal take on the action itself, but I do know that the lead up to it was that their comrade, a young woman, had been tased and was being dragged by like handcuffs digging into her wrist and was like screaming in pain, right?
I
I'm
can
just
add
saying.
a bit into that.
Go for it, yeah.
Basically, so some of these Filton guards had absolutely insane weapons that I
One of them
don't.
had a whip.
One of them had a fucking whip, an Indiana Jones style whip. Like, I know that some people listening to the show might be like, oh, I can't see what this looks like. Mule's probably exaggerating. No, it's a fucking whip like Indiana Jones had.
I'm vouching for this. I've seen it. It's a
You
bullwhip.
can
It's a
find this
black leather
stuff.
bullwhip.
It's so bizarre. One of them was also carrying a kind of gas spray. I can't remember. I think it's called Parva. I can't remember. It's a kind
Yes, I
of
think
gas
so.
that literally, to take a word that Trump likes to say, discombobulates you. Like, and I'm being serious. Like, it confuses you. It makes you think that you've gone blind and all this kind of stuff. And you can see one of these guys spray Samuel Corner, who is the actionist who is alleged to have done this with this stuff when he runs up to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's all pretty fucked. And one other important detail I think in this is that one of the people on the security forces side of this struggle had also had a sledgehammer.
Yes. Yeah, it
that seems pretty
took
relevant.
the sledgehammer off them and started
Yeah,
threatening them with it. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so as I've said, all of this comes after last week's juries refused to condemn six of the Fulton 24, the kind of core six involved in the most illegal alleged activity of the Fulton 24, what the others still being held for trial at the moment. These are the activists at the heart of the government's case against Palestine Action, so it should all, really be dissolving now. Um, the prescription was brought in, as I said, alongside the Maniacs Murder Club and the Russian Imperial Movement by previous Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, who left the post in September last year. Current Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood jumped on this moment of victory for basic human decency and morality to say she finds the outcome, quote, disappointing, and that the government will try to appeal in the opposite direction. But she is a Labour Home Secretary after all. War crimes is what she likes to eat. Palestine Action co-founder, friend of the show, Huda Amori, said the decision was, quote, a monumental victory for both our fundamental freedoms in Britain and in the struggle for freedom for the Palestinian people. So until we hear that the government has lost their appeal and Palestine Action is officially unprescribed, be aware that their support of them is still monitored but not currently arrestable. So if you're doing that shit loudly or right in front of a cop with a sign or whatever, they will still make a note. And if the decision goes the other way, you could be liable. So like, just don't go being trying to clown on cops and getting yourself arrested. Um, but yeah, good news for now, and we're fingers crossed for the near future. Tim, why don't you tell us about what's going on in India?
So we talked about this a couple weeks back. There was one big march, but back in what was it, like, well, maybe a month or so ago. But yeah, I mean, there've been a bunch of other different actions since then. But so yeah, just like last week, an estimated 300 million workers, farmers, and students shut down vast sectors of the Indian economy. Yeah, on February 12th, and a massive general strike. Coal fields, refineries, banks, and transport ground to a halt in a historic display of working class power against the ultra right wing BJP government's agenda. And so BJP is Modi's party. A lot of people just know Modi. They don't necessarily know the party that he is from. The strikers' demands directly target the government's corporate friendly anti-people policies. They're calling for the scrapping of new labor codes that strip worker protections, the restoration of the Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which is the MGNREGA, and a withdrawal of trade deals with the US and EU that they say will destroy Indian agriculture and sovereignty. This is another big thing at the moment. There's currently some trade deal stuff going through with New Zealand and Australia, with India as well. And yeah, it's like, I think there's a lot of neoliberal brainwashing with people where they think that all like free trade deals are like, this like good thing. And, it was a real big American thing in the 90s where they were like, we got to have free trade with these starving nations and stuff. But a lot of the time, these free trade deals are like, they are pretty exploitative and can disempower local economies. So you get like you get a lot of these things where it's like on one end they're touted as a really positive thing, but then on the other end of the deal, you might get local industries where they're like, actually, no, this deal is going to completely fuck us. Like if like say you work in an industry like, I don't know, like a sugar industry is one that this has happened a lot to in the past, where your government makes a free trade agreement with another country that produces a lot more sugar cheaper than you can produce it domestically, then it completely destroys your domestic industry because everyone just gets it from there. So yeah, there's a lot of this kind of stuff in India where they're like, oh, well, if we have free trade agreements with other countries, or maybe like the goods that we produce are just going to be sent offshore instead of here, which is exactly what happened to the Irish during the Irish potato famine. Anyway, there's a lot more stuff like that. but so don't get sucked in just by free trade agreements. This is more than an economic strike, though. It's a political fight for India's secular and democratic fabric. The mobilization explicitly denounced the BJP's Hindu supremacist authoritarian actions, framing the struggle as a defense of the constitution itself against a dangerous majoritarian government. The sheer scale of this action, uniting industrial workers, peasants, and agricultural laborers across the organized and unorganized sectors, is a powerful warning. The unions have made it clear. This one-day strike is symbolic. And if the government doesn't back down, they're ready to escalate to longer and larger actions. So yeah, this is a bit of a flex to be like, hey, look, 300 million people, we could do that. We did that one day. What happens next time if we do it for 2? What happens if we do it for, for 7 days? Or we've seen recently even general strikes that have undeclared endpoints, which is incredible. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that as it develops. I think there's India is a bit of a blind spot for a lot of people. They don't realize that, this entire time that, Trump and all of them have been consolidating power in the West, Modi has been doing a similar thing in India, and they have a gigantic population and kind of in conflict with most of their bordering nations at the moment. So we'll see how that develops. But Mule, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is happening over in the US?
No, yeah, that's great work, Tim. Definitely appreciate the India update. This is some more great news on the theme of general strikes and big strikes. We got more US students continuing walkouts in the weeks after the Minnesota general strike. So this is really, really big, exciting stuff in a continuingly unfolding situation, massively underreported by mainstream news. Students all over the USA have been continuing to walk out of their classes and schools in order to protest the ongoing oppression by ICE in the country. The students are not just protesting ICE being around and doing ICE shit that they regularly do, but also proposed bills that would allow ICE into schools in states all across the country. The protests have been so widespread and continuous that departments of education in multiple states have had to release statements to parents demanding that they curtail their kids into not taking part. For example, the Florida Department of Education released a statement saying, quote, "Administrators and instructional staff must not encourage, organize, promote, or facilitate student participation in protest activity during the school day. Any conduct by school or district personnel that diverts students from instruction, undermines classroom authority, or compromises student supervision, violates professional responsibilities, and warrants disciplinary action." End quote. In another school in Kansas City, 62 students who walked out were suspended for taking part. The scale and frequency of the protests have been tracked by Barb at Ground Level News, a Red Planet watcher and activist based in Utah, in states including Florida, Utah, Washington, Arizona, Missouri, Minnesota, California, Texas, Indiana, Montana, Ohio, Hawaii, Oklahoma, Nevada, Georgia, Michigan, Maryland, Illinois, Iowa, Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, New Hampshire, Colorado, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Kansas, Nebraska, Kentucky, and some more. That's just some that I could manage to get down without getting bored of it. This is a lot of the 50 states of America, and they've been continuing every week since the Minnesota general strike on January the 30th. It's an absolutely phenomenal amount of information that Barb has gathered, and it really speaks to how frequent and how widespread these student protests are, particularly as they are happening all over the country, even in deep red states. These protests are happening pretty much on a weekly basis at this point. Sometimes every other day there is another protest at another school. So they are happening pretty much constantly. As well as state departments of education attempting to punish the students, adult agitators have been attacking these children all over the USA, and that is not exaggeration there, with at least 6 reports in the last week of protests that we know of. There is a growing number of adult agitators who have taken it upon themselves to simply literally assault children for exercising their First Amendment rights. However, it's not all bad news, as one man was sent absolutely packing with his tail between his legs when the students stood up for their comrade being attacked, who was also a girl, and forced him to go home embarrassed about being beat up by a bunch of kids. huge solidarity with the kids in the next generation of activists. As someone who helped his classmates break out of the school grounds to protest the Iraq War, I can safely say this is a great indicator of how those kids will end up politically in adulthood, which is pretty based. But yeah, and special thanks to Barb from Ground Level News for just collating all this information. Like when I say to your chat, she told me in my stream on, I think it was Thursday, oh, there's loads of protests that are still happening because, and it's kids and it's really, really important stuff. And I said, yeah, get on to me, give me a message. And she got me into a Discord where she's collating this stuff. And there are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts of all kinds of schools all up and down the USA. So when I say that this is happening a lot, it is happening a lot. But yes, tell us a little bit more now, Soph, about stuff in the US and the EU regarding trans people.
Sure thing, Neil. Thanks for the update with the student protests. I've seen a bit of it, mostly the kid in the brown hoodie. Has been around a lot and being memed a lot if people have
It's
seen that.
so good.
But
It's so fucking good. That
it is
picture of
really
it, like,
important to remember that's just like one viral moment from an enormous movement. And like I think that because of the limited agency of kids in our society, people tend to take student protests and school walkouts like less seriously. But it's just like it matters that these are human beings engaging in democracy, and that matters. I'm going to talk a bit about how nothing matters if you're a legislator in a bourgeois democracy. Um, because this week has seen several different things happen in courts regarding trans people in different places. And it's hard to feel like any of them are going to have a huge like we're going to talk about it. The impacts that feel like they could be real are the negative ones. So this week, so legislators in both the US and the EU attempt to move bourgeois liberal democracy towards a commitment to trans rights. Meanwhile, in the UK, the legal crisis created by transphobic legislative nonsense continues to get worse. So before I go on with it, I just want to say like what I'm always saying about this, which is like we live in patriarchal capitalism. We live in patriarchal racial capitalism, and like you can't remove racism from it while keeping the same system, and you can't remove misogyny from it while keeping the same system, and you can't remove transphobia or trans misogyny from it without while keeping the same system because these are features of how it works. In the US, Democrats are trying to move a trans bill of rights through the House, and obviously the GOP is enforcing more and more restrictions on trans rights in the US all the time. Um, Red states come out with more utterly terrifying, at least draft legislation basically every day, and some of it does get through. Like it's horrendously unsafe to be a trans woman in, say, Florida or Texas now. And this is the thing is that like without a deeper change to what's going on, trans people can't say they're any safer for the government introducing a trans bill of rights. Like the only thing that will make us safer is organizing. So I'm going to say like 4 times in this section, go watch my trans organizing video. We literally will only be free when we organize. In the EU Parliament, members have approved a report from the UN Commission on the Status of Women that calls for the full recognition of trans women as women. This change effectively should like trickle down onto all like EU groups that are trying to like exist for and campaign for women's welfare and women's safety, that they will make sure that they're paying attention to trans women as well, and broadly have a positive legislative effect across EU member nations. But it's kind of the same problem. Like if if individual states act in incredibly transphobic ways or ways that put trans people, especially trans women's lives in danger, like the big club they're in saying we have a rule where we're not tolerating it, but also we are tolerating it because if you do it, we're not gonna like kick you out or sanction you or anything. Like there's talk in the UK now about like could the UK rejoin the EU? We're broadly just accepting that everything really is fucked. And I think like the anti-American sentiment that's being brought out by the Epstein files has people going, yeah, Brexit was like an evil scam that was done on us. But like if the UK was in the EU right now, it would definitely contradict any of this, like this stuff. So I'll explain more on that because the negative court development this week has been in the UK, and it's complicated. It's like the Good Law Project basically lost a challenge against the EHRC interim guidance. They were challenging to force the court to clarify. They did get the court to clarify. The court has clarified badly and stupidly because they're stupid and transphobes, um, and don't understand what the fuck they're talking about and repeatedly reject any guidance or input or evidence that is just directly from trans people about our own lives. Um, what a bunch of dickheads. Um, Basically, the way they've clarified is that trans people shouldn't be barred from using the appropriate bathrooms unless it's in the context of their own workplace, in which case they shouldn't be forced to use the wrong bathroom, but can't be allowed to use the right bathroom either, and should basically be encouraged to use a unisex bathroom. They explicitly said or like the way it works out, I've heard this explicitly said that trans people who are, or rather, sorry, a workplace that only provides trans inclusive male and female bathrooms would be considered to be breaking the law. Because of the possibility of a lawsuit from a transphobe at a workplace where a trans person works, this means that like workplaces need to try and enforce their policy outing trans people along the way, which is something that we're supposed to like have the protected characteristic in order to stop this exact thing happening. This is what I mean about this legal nonsense. How far into the weeds we are now is an exact like is exactly the point I'm making in all of this, that like trying to make these changes in bourgeois liberal democracy, it's not it's not helping. We need to be organized. Um, Trans people who are out at work will be expected under this legal clarification to use unisex bathrooms only, and employers may be made to out their trans employees for fear of legal trouble. Um, a kind of final part to this, a fourth part to this that isn't in a court but is like related to the HRC clarification, is that the Women's Institute, which like is a an organization with like local chapters for democratic organizing for women towards women's interests, that has been trans positive for many years. Like they even ran a like cover issue of their magazine about trans inclusivity as recently as 2023, and it was like super approved of by membership. Like they really love, like they're very proudly trans inclusive, but because of institutional capture, TERFs at high levels of the Women's Institute, presumably who know no trans women, have interpreted everything in the most transphobic way, and have said that they're not allowing trans women in the Women's Institute anymore. This is leading 12 chapters of the Women's Institute to close. Most of them because the membership have said, we don't want that handed down to us. We don't agree with that. That's insane. And several, at least one place I've seen, the venue where they regularly held their meetings has kicked them out for doing it. Um, so uh, not only is trying to like legislate people's experience of basic social relations like in like not going to create positive change in the way that like organized democracy is, but it can actively be destructive to organized democracy. Once again, please go watch my video about trans organizing. Things are not going to change for trans people until we are organized. We are not going to be free until we are organized. We can't expect cis people to do it for us. Go watch my video again. That's it. Tim, why don't you tell us about what's going on in Mexico?
Yeah, cool. So Mexico's Senate backs reduced work week in initial vote. So a lot of people have been pushing this lately. They've been saying, Mexico is kind of the, like the inverse of what's happening in a lot of other places right now. Um, President Claudia Sheinbaum has been, like kind of like the most pro-worker president that they've had in a really long time. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a nuanced kind of thing, right? So, yeah, the Senate has unanimously approved a plan to gradually reduce the legal work week from 48 hours to 40 hours by 2030. So, yeah, the current legal work week is 48 hours, which is huge. So they're reducing it to 40, which is, like that's basically the standard in a lot of other countries. And yeah, by 2030 as well. So finally, they're addressing the country's brutal status as the OECD leader for longest working hours. So this is a long overdue win for workers, even if it's just a small step towards a decent work-life balance. The proposal, championed by President Claudia Sheinbaum, will cut 2 hours per year starting in 2027. It's a direct challenge to the old capitalist logic that profits depend on grinding workers into the ground, recognizing that people deserve time to actually live. So, however, unions and opposition are right to call this a watered down version, riddled with loopholes. The long, gradual timeline means millions will wait years for relief, while the lowest wages and worst productivity in the OECD show the system can afford to do far more, far faster. So, yeah, it is one of these things where it's like, it is a good step, but, there's a lot of people right now that are like, yeah, like she's awesome, like ultimate communist queen and stuff like that. It's like, she's doing good things, but even the local unions and like labor movement do kind of see this as like a good move, but ultimately quite unsatisfactory because it is, yeah, it's over the course of years until 2030. So yeah, 4 years to cut down that extra 8 hours. But yeah, this reform exposes the sheer greed of Mexican capital, which has for decades extracted immense wealth by forcing the longest hours for the least pay. The fight now is to close the loopholes, speed up the timeline, and demand a 40-hour week that's a real immediate right, not a distant promise. That's the other thing. I did see that some of the unions were saying that they need a guarantee that this is actually locked in, because it would be so easy for another party to get in next election and change it before it's actually done,
That was the first thing I thought, yeah, when you
Yeah,
started
yeah,
talking about the length of the reforms, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and I'm not too sure what all the loopholes are, but I did see some stuff about the way that a lot of people are employed over there on dodgy contracts. So it's more like, oh, you're not a full-time worker working 48 hours a week. You're actually a contractor working 48 hours a week. You have all the same conditions, requirements as a full-time worker, but you're a contract, like things like that. So yeah, what is to prevent people, if they can already do that under the existing law, then they need to address that as well to stop people from just being like, oh, okay, cool, well, we'll just get rid of all our full-time staff and hire them as contractors. But yeah, we'll see how that developed. It is, yeah, this was just the initial reading. So obviously from here they go to debate it and work on various sections of it. Would be amazing to see that actually come through. Yeah, considering how hard done by Mexican workers are. Yeah, I did. I went there years ago. Mexico City's probably one of my favorite cities that I've ever been to in the world. It's incredible. But yeah, it was a place where there is a huge disparity between there's like the middle class people, and then there's like a huge gap between them and the working poor. And the working poor are, yeah, working a lot, and yeah, longest hours, lowest wages. It's very stark and very obvious when you're over there. But yeah, why don't Mule, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is happening over in the Middle East?
Yeah. Okay, so this is the update on Iran and the tensions in between Iran and the USA. So this week, Donald Trump announced that Iran wants to make a deal and offered to not develop nuclear weapons, and that they hadn't offered this before, And if they'd have made a deal, we'd have made a deal with Iran a long time ago. Of course, Iran has a fatwa issued by Imam Ali Khamenei in the mid-90s to not develop nuclear weapons, as they are antithetical to the teachings of Islam. This is broadly true, and Iran has only sought to enrich uranium for domestic applications, including for nuclear energy and medical treatments. Since the USA appeared to have backed off from demanding Iran reduce its ballistic missile program, which is something that Israel wanted him to add on to the negotiations, and ending its support for allies Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Netanyahu took a plane to Washington in what is his 7th meeting with Trump since the beginning of Trump's term in 2025. The Israeli papers have been speculating on when the war with Iran, which it views as never having ended, only being in a period of ceasefire, would continue. The broader Israeli media is now questioning and debating what Israel could do to get the US to back them up in another attack on Iran. With some outlets like the Jerusalem Post even engaging in extreme cope, saying that Iran is confusing Trump by engaging in his style of chaotic communication, simultaneously criticizing Trump and Khamenei. Trump has appeared to hold a line with Netanyahu, with the BBC reporting that he's told Bibi that nuclear-only discussions must continue before any other demands are made. But what we have to remember is that before Israel attacked Iran back in June 2025, Trump appeared to distance himself from the Zionist entity, not including them in a tour of West Asia. And indeed, the Israeli press were criticizing him at that time as well, and engaged in panicked speculation that he may even recognize Palestine. This was some outlets that were saying this. Israel certainly would not have attacked Iran if it wasn't sure that the US would back it up back in 2025. So Trump would have almost certainly authorized the strikes. And at this point, we can only assume that anything is possible. But it's an interesting situation where we're looking at, okay, Israel is trying to tell its populace one thing. They're trying to say, yep, we're going to get the US to assist us in another attack on Iran. And then as soon as the US president goes back to Washington, it's just like, oh, no, yeah, it's fine. They want to make a deal. It seems pretty good. They're going to make a deal. We're going to have a deal. And they're freaking out. Now, obviously, we know that Trump might just bomb them anyway. Even if they reach a so-called deal, they might just fucking get bombed anyway, and that's how that's going to go down. But it is quite funny to see that Netanyahu is panicking and wants this thing to happen sooner rather than later, particularly engaging in the discussions about ballistic missile program, because of course the ballistic missiles are what absolutely battered Israel during that 12-day war in June 2025. So that is the news segment of the show. And just to remind you all that our show is only made possible through our patrons and our Patreon. Please head over to patreon.com/red_planet and choose a tier to donate to us with. There's lots of different options, lots of different benefits that you can get, including merch, extra content, and all that kind of business. So head over there and have a little look. But Soph, you are going to introduce our main topic segment.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Mule. And thanks for shouting out the Patreon. Everyone should check out the Patreon. We have a pre-recorded interview for you. It's an audio-only one that I did with a comrade who has been on the show before. Is using a different name this time. This is kind of half-jokingly for maximum OPSEC. If people don't know, like in Signal chats, it's good practice to just regularly change your username and profile picture all the time, because then even if like surveilling forces had a screenshot of your chats, they couldn't link up who was who consistently across different screenshots. So here's the intro. In a time of escalating repression by the state, some people take escalation to be the only constant. They treat an open conflict between citizens and forces of the state as an inevitable conclusion. There is plenty of historic precedent and rhetoric from the fascist regime and its many goons that supports this conclusion, but lots of people remain scared to materially act in line with it. It's something people feel they must either accept and change their entire mode of operation or push down deep and completely ignore. On Red Planet, we take the long view. that building the revolutionary society in systems of community, democracy, and care is the vital work that will birth the world we desire. And the majority of work to be done is in this community, democracy, and care. But we also acknowledge that some will choose to put their organizing capacity, time, and labor into community defense, some of it armed. We cannot pretend that meaningful organizing around firearms and their use is either not happening or just happening somewhere else. I mean, I say this as a British woman, and this is who has interviewed an American woman, but it is happening in the Imperial Corps, and it could it could happen here. This week we have an interview with a recurring guest who changes her name each time for maximum OPSEC. Welcome to the show, Princess Diana. um, and we'll be talking about community organizing in response to ICE and firearms training for community defense. I really liked this interview, and I hope you all enjoy it as well. I think it was very informative. So welcome back to the show. First, I gotta figure out how to address you because you've been on the show before, but you change your name rapidly for Maximum OPSEC. Welcome back to the show, Diana, Princess of Wales. It's great to have you here. Why don't you remind people, I guess, for the avid listeners, and tell people for those who are just tuning in, what kind of community organizing you've broadly been up to the last couple of years, the stuff that's going on around you. Yeah, the stuff we discussed last time.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I am Princess Diana, back to it, back at it again. Princess Diana 2 even. And I've been working with queer people specifically in my area in the United States, to learn how to use firearms safely in an environment that is like welcoming and like for queer people by queer people. It's really rewarding, but also current events really illustrate a kind of pressing need for this kind of work, which also sucks. Oh man, where to begin? I mean, we've been doing potlucks. I took a page out of your book. Yeah. I remember, just somebody very wise and dear to me said that you should do a potluck ideally once a week to build community and to kind of like share a group meal, that cuts costs and stuff. It's been really cool and really rewarding. Those plan themselves now. My group does them every other week. And it's really helped to solve intergroup disputes, I think, personally. But we've also grown in membership over the last year, which has been really nice. And so right now we're focusing on how to address all of the new faces and make sure that they come away with like learning practical skills. It's getting really spooky here.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the main focus today. Did you mention the first aid stuff that you do, the first aid training stuff?
Oh yeah, actually, we recently ran a Stop the Bleed and the class was completely full. It's been really nice, we were able to actually like get our trainers paid. It used to be more of a volunteer basis, which is really rad, don't get me wrong. We obviously want people to like donate their time and volunteer and stuff, but we did find that without a little bit of an incentive to go, that people would oftentimes overcommit, maybe, and then be unable to go for one reason or another. And then, the trainer who volunteered their time and was offering these skills for free, for instance, like had a pretty poor turnout and came away with like a bad taste in their mouths from the class. And so, we had that change over like the last 6 months. And yeah, we recently have been running full Stop the Bleed classes for like how to render first aid in a emergency situations, specifically involving gunshot wounds, but there's a lot of other ways you can be injured that require a tourniquet or, to pack something full of gauze.
I guess this is a quick, worthwhile thing, although perhaps technically a bit of a tangent, but like Stop the Bleed is run across America as far as I'm aware. How do you set up doing a class? Because I'm sure that's something people listening would be interested in doing.
So I know some like people who are medics by profession, EMTs, and I think one person might be a doctor. So part of this comes from like professional training, but ultimately the skills themselves are very, very like transferable.
So it's something that any trained medic can run one of these classes?
Yeah, anybody with medical know-how by profession. I would take a course. They run them all the time. I think if you probably just Google "stop the bleed near you" and sort through all the AI bullshit, you will be able to find the org, and then you will be able to like find "near me." Definitely in the US. I don't know about Europe.
Sick. Okay, cool. So I guess where we want to take the discussion today is the public response to the ICE crackdown in Minneapolis, the killings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty especially were the highest profile. I think things that drew people out, mobilized people. The general, I mean, things are on a slow boil of getting shittier from the Trump administration anyway, but yeah, the siege on Minneapolis seems to be the biggest sudden driver of people waking the fuck up. And you told me about that full class that you had and the need to like up the schedule of stuff. So I guess like what's the general mood around you and how has it affected the organizing you're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the mood is definitely everybody everywhere is watching Minneapolis. As well as some other places, LA has been seeing a lot of violence. Like the violence there never stopped. We just stopped talking about it. There's been some really nutty updates. It seems like ICE has been using mortars in Portland. I saw a video last night in like a group chat that I have using like chemical munitions, probably, like
Oh my
tear
God.
gas and HC gas. You can see the trail in these really high arcs in the sky. Well, now we know why CPB wanted mortars. I wonder what they're going to want missiles for.
Christ.
Yeah. So, like for us, we've definitely started pushing people who have like know-how that we've like, you go shooting with people a bunch of times, you go hiking with them a bunch of times, and you share meals with them a lot. You get to know them and you get to know kind of which person you would feel safest working with in certain high trust situations. I'm going to let people imagine what that might be. And so, like eventually people kind of like, well, you're really good at shooting and, you're also really personable. Why don't you come learn how to do like a concealed carry class? I think one of the things that we have been talking about has been like, how do you leverage firearms in a deterrent sort of way without necessarily it devolving into, okay, it's go time. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of people have guns, but also there's so much like bad advice online. There's a lot of snake oil, there's a lot of like bad marketing. And then there's also a lot of like really terrible advice from people who don't know any better, who are just repeating what they've heard online. Like, shotguns are good for home defense. They're not. Just get an AR-15.
Yeah, I mean, even for stuff like filming stuff at protests, I think I've heard in the last 24 hours several strongly conflicting, very serious pieces of advice for how to handle filming at protests. And I'm just like, oh man, everyone wants to help.
I hate to say his name because why bring him up, but even like Will Stancil, like today, I think, I just happened to re-download Blue Sky and I blocked this guy a while ago because I don't want to see him and I don't want to engage with his stupid shit that enrages me. But I still see it sometimes. And he said today, you don't have anything to be afraid of protesting. I'm just like, for everybody, let's just break down the popular things that people are saying right now and the responses we're seeing and stuff like from the government. Let's just break that down for a second. People online frequently are invoking the Gestapo and slave catching patrols.
Yeah.
And, saying that ICE is like those groups, which I don't think is inaccurate. I think it's pretty accurate to say that ICE is pretty similar to those groups in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We have a place that the Republicans call Alligator Alcatraz. Sure, if you're not an abolitionist, that wouldn't horrify you. So, but, the normies gave it the name, which again, I think is pretty accurate. Honestly, I'm probably giving them too much credit. It was probably somebody cooler calling it Alligator Auschwitz. When that thing was first opened, it was built in 8 days. There's no plumbing that like adequate. because it's below sea level. So how do you dig out the plumbing for that kind of infrastructure? You don't. Why do you have a camp that big without adequate, facilities, unless you don't intend for people to be there that long? That place is a death camp. It already is, right? And people are accurately calling it it's a concentration camp. Like, what we're seeing ICE doing is a continuation of the anti-Indigenous violence that has been at the heart of this country, the anti-Black violence that has governed this country since forever. And ICE's violence is reflected in that. And we see it all the time, every time we open a social media app, right? And so, again, that's not an inaccurate comparison, I think, an image to evoke. So, okay, we have a Gestapo, we have an Auschwitz, and you guys still think it's not dangerous to protest? Sure, you're white. You're not going to be targeted by racialized violence, but so are Renee Good and Alex Preddy. They're killing white people right now in order to get a bunch of us to peel off and go home scared and let it happen. And if the chips fall in the wrong way, that's what they'll get. But I think, I don't know, I'm actually pretty energized, and I'm pretty hopeful. It feels different from 2020 in a lot of ways.
Certainly.
And so, to me, I've been trying to teach people how to use a gun, because that's about all I can really do, is feed people and teach them how to defend themselves.
I think if people have that, that's a pretty solid basis in many regards.
It definitely is, though it doesn't answer all of the questions. Like, Alex Pretty had a gun, right? And he got shot. He was executed in the street.
Right.
We all saw it. Obviously, that didn't serve as a deterrent. And even if he had pulled it, they probably would have shot him to death there and then anyway. Which means that, concealed carry isn't necessarily a deterrent. That's not what it's effective at. And it isn't, not necessarily. It can be, I think, if enough people have concealed carries, it can be a deterrent, which is why my group is, we have full, concealed carry classes. I'm actually going to get certified as a concealed carry instructor, so I can start giving classes on my own independently. We're going to decentralize our one subject matter expert's authority, and we're going to get more classes going. More classes means more CCWs going. More CCWs means more hard targets. But more people having concealed carry permits doesn't necessarily translate to an overt deterrent. And I am reminded of these 3 very brave individuals that I saw in videos. 2 of them were out in the streets after Alex Pretty got murdered, and they had bandanas over their face. Not perfect. You could see the tops of their heads. Not perfect, but they had adequate ear protection. They had AR-15s. They had multiple magazines. They had plate carriers. They had clearly identifying, like a defend equality patch. Those are dudes who know what they're doing. There was this guy who, unfortunately, he didn't have his face covered. He did get doxxed by the far right, but he was out in front of his neighborhood, and he had a pretty nice gun. And it had a suppressor on it, and he had his nails painted, and he was just standing there kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just standing out here because ICE is coming into our neighborhoods and intimidating people, and I'm not going into other people's neighborhoods to intimidate them, but I'm going to be here in mine, and I'm going to protect us. Very friendly Midwestern threats of violence.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that is a visual deterrent, and ICE is more likely to take that into consideration than a CCW, at least at first, I think. I think that could translate into fears of CCWs, which could translate into them doing their jobs less and less, which is good.
Yeah, every report that we see on low ICE morale and ICE officers being scared to go and do their jobs, that's good. We want fascists scared.
Fuck yeah. Can I say that here? It's fine.
I'm probably going to edit that out.
Okay, well, you know what? Oh my god, Sophie from Mars sending the bobbies after me, censoring my First Amendment rights. You heard it here, folks.
Red Planet indicted on charges of trolling the US government, telling agents to
Sorry, we were talking about how Princess Diana of Wales supports open carry. But I was actually going to I was going to touch on one other topic that leaves me so frustrated right now because okay, so that's the obvious visual deterrent that they'll take seriously. If a bunch of people start escorting okay, first of all, this idea presupposes several things. One, that these dudes with guns are known to the people that they want to serve. So you have to go there and feed people. You have to go there to their meetings. You should learn Spanish or whatever the majority immigrant language is around you. There's a lot of them in this country. You should be a known quantity to the people that you want to serve, because if they know you, they will consent for you to be there doing that for them, right? And that is honestly the key difference between doing an open carry security role at the 50-51 protest where that jumpy idiot motherfucker just shot and killed somebody because
Jesus.
What's it called? Open carry is legal in Utah, in Salt Lake City, right? And so this one guy who had already been open carrying at other protests before, he was a known dude to do this, showed up to the protest. And then the security officer saw him and just drew his gun and shot at him and hit him, but it went through and it hit another protester and killed that guy. And now
oh my God.
But it's worse because now that open carry protester is on the hook for the murder charge instead of the guy who shot and killed the guy and wounded somebody for no reason. Really, the difference between that guy and the guys who, these hypothetical guys that I'm talking about, even thinking about it, I don't know if those three dudes had the consent of the community around them. So that's something to consider too.
Yeah, some people need to think about whether they're doing something for social media more than for the actually vulnerable people there. And that's yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And I think if you have the consent of the community that you're trying to serve, then it will be a lot harder for you to go wrong and to do wrong by them, because you'll at least have been living according to their wishes and stuff, at least in their spaces, and that changes you. So that's the difference to me between a cop or a peace police armed protester guy versus, somebody who's your average person in Rojava doing that role, or in Myanmar doing that role in a People's Defense Force unit.
Just before, when we were chatting before the interview, we were talking about James Stout's new book. You've just read it. I haven't yet. I'm looking forward to it. You talking about Rojava and Myanmar reminds me, you're drawing parallels between America and the way things are going there now to places where, there has been an open war by the government against the people. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you didn't think that was where things were going, you wouldn't be doing the kind of training you're doing, I guess. But do you see more kind of parallels between America and other places from that book or other sources?
Sorry, I'm gonna cry a little bit. A little bit, definitely. Okay, what I'm seeing here, what James Stout's writing on Myanmar and the People's Defense Forces there, a central theme is that you kind of have to use this thing called the anarchist squint, which is is it exactly anarchist? No. By ideology? No. But is it a group of people who are organizing horizontally towards a common goal of defeating a fascist junta? Yes. He wrote a lot about how, a lot of these groups, a lot of them are ethnic defense forces. There's the Karenni National Defense Force, there's the Tang National Liberation Army. There's a whole lot of groups, and a lot of them are composed by people who are not really anarchists, but they're doing anarchism. And so I am seeing whispers of that, I guess, traces of that in a lot of the stuff that I've been doing lately, which feels so fulfilling. But also, it comes with the certainty that I think all of this is going to escalate, and that's going to be really hard for a lot of people, and it's not really fair to me or to anybody else.
Yeah.
I think something that was really cool that I read was this, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a YPG unit in Rojava. And do you remember when ISIS was surrounding Mount Sinjar and was doing genocide against the Yazidis?
Yeah.
Did you know that it was like 30 to 40 dudes who like saved them? Who like got the corridor open that people were able to leave? It was just
Oh my God.
30 to 40 guys who were like, fuck it, we ball. Who else is going to do it? This guy in the book, Ali, wrote about how he felt sorry for these people because all of the states in the world, the coalition forces were right there. And what were they doing? They were just kind of like dropping aid packages that sometimes crush people, just like in Gaza. And he just was like, hey, Commander, me and the boys are going to go do something about that. And the guy was like, please don't. And he was like, no, it's the right thing to do. I got to do it. And due to the nature of like anarchist fighting, I mean, they're not even all anarchists. Some of them are, but you know, like due to the sort of horizontal organization, if you use the anarchist squint, I'm just gonna, the anarchist horizontal style like organization of the SDF's like military, it's not that big a deal if 30 to 40 dudes go, yeah, we got to do that because it's the right thing to do. Their organization can withstand that, and they like respect each other enough to like carry out these missions. He wouldn't do that if it wasn't super important. He wouldn't ask me this if it wasn't super important. She wouldn't be leading me if it wasn't super important. And I don't know, it's really inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an incredible story. Thank you for telling me about that.
I think if you use the anarchist squint, you can kind of start to see it take shape here. And I think that's really cool and also scary, but really cool.
Hopefully this will draw us away from stuff that's quite so upsetting. But like, one thing I wanted to ask about is other communities around the US. I'm not so much asking, do you know of others doing similar stuff or whatever? I kind of don't even really want to probe at that. But just like, supposing there is other organizing going on, how do you envision a further progression here, like of changes in how people relate to each other, maybe like changes to community?
I mean, changes to community. I mean, I think, I don't know. It's hard. I guess what I'm doing is I'm just trying to make sure that I'm a known quantity to the people that I'm trying to like help. And so I'm white. So like obviously spaces get organized that are outside sort of my like vision, my sphere of whatever, however you want to characterize it. But I've been going to like a lot of immigrant meetings. I'm getting confirmer training. Part of what's making Minneapolis work so well is that they have so many people, partly who are confirmers everywhere. There's just a critical saturation.
So what's a confirmer? What does a confirmer do?
So a confirmer is somebody whose job it is to just kind of drop things and go run to like an ICE sighting, a reported ICE sighting. They go there, they see what's happening, and they can confirm it, which then focuses rapid response efforts. You know, everybody who's there waiting on the edge of their seats, is it go time? Do I go show up? They're sitting in their cars already warming up or whatever, and they're waiting for, hey, ICE sighting confirmed. And what I've been seeing that's really cool is people are using the salute report format more. And I think it's crazy because I would have expected, like, my friends to know what that is, and I'm surprised that other people do. Well, I'm not so surprised because it's a military format, and the military is predatory, and it preys on people of color a lot of the time, more so than white people. And so I'm not surprised that there's, like, probably veterans who are plugged in who I don't know, who have also disseminated this information, or just people who know it from the last time we were all protesting. I'm not sure where it came from. There's a lot of vectors, but salute. It is a format for just like giving a bunch of information in a kind of concise manner, something I'm pretty incapable of doing.
Well, that's what the training's for.
Exactly. It stands for size, activity, location, uniform, time, equipment. So, for instance, you'd go, on your walkie-talkie or on your cell phone, you'd say, there's 4 SUVs, 16 agents. Their activity, what are they doing? They have 3 people in handcuffs. They're fighting with a door on somebody's house, trying to get inside the house. Location. The address is 123 Main Street. We're in this neighborhood. Uniform. They're all wearing like this puke green dog shit. They have, ICE placards on. They're clearly marked as police. They're all wearing ski masks. You want to focus on their clothing, which, is like different from the equipment part. But so time, it is the time it is right now, whenever you're making this. And then equipment, they have AR-15s, they have handcuffs, zip ties, they're wearing plate carriers, they have a dog with them. That's what a salute report is. You can also do an abbreviated salute report called a SALT report, size, activity, location, time. And there's something that's really cool, and I wish that I remembered the acronym, but some people have been making Huerta reports, which is the Spanish language equivalent.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. When I saw it, and it's named after Dolores Huerta, which is so like rad.
Oh.
I think it's also a really great way to like keep it in people's minds, especially if they don't speak English as a first language. I think it's such a useful tool. It's such a great way to like reframe it. I think more people should be learning Spanish. They're targeting a lot of immigrants, and so we should ideally have as many people as possible who can communicate with like all of them ideally. So, yeah, I think people should learn Spanish because that's like, due to colonialism, one of the predominant languages of the people who are currently most targeted by ICE across the US. And I think it would really help change their mindset and help them interface with community more. I think that it would help them serve, and directly interfacing with people's needs is going to be quicker, more efficient, and it's going to get the problem done, sooner rather than playing telephone with a dozen different translators. If there's like a huge Chinese population near you that, knows Cantonese, try it, dude. What's the worst that happens? You fail, but you know a little bit. Okay, that's cool. I think that's one way to sort of change community. I definitely have been asking about Spanish language lessons. To add to that point, it is deeply frustrating to me as somebody who's like trying to figure out what's next, that so many of these Democrats are still pursuing gun control legislation with blank police cutouts, which includes ICE. So ICE can get all of the weapons they want without any sort of safeguards, but we can't get them. We're subject to more surveillance. The Colorado recently, a state where I have friends in, there's a bill that's going to be effective in July if it passes, where the barrel of a firearm is now like a prohibited item that you need to be tracked. The gun stores are required to keep a list of who bought a barrel from them. And you're supposed to buy a barrel from them, so you can't order it online anymore. So they're supposed to keep records of everybody who bought a barrel in the last 5 years, creating a registry. Like, what does that mean in a time of heightened ICE surveillance? What if like a person of color wants to get a gun? Oh my God, now their very ethnic name is on a registry and ICE knows to go there and knows to go in guns blazing. Who cares? Like that is so insane to me that these people are still pursuing gun control legislation. And in a lot of major cities, you can't do open carry like long guns. As far as I know, all of the groups who are doing that sort of thing are just like right-wingers. They're chuds.
Right.
That's just deeply frustrating to me. Anyway.
We haven't discussed where you are, we're not gonna, but something here I want to get at is the slightly unknowable and certainly uneven application of ICE and where they're targeting. I think obviously the most you can do is in your community where you already are, and that's true for everyone. But yeah, I wonder what you think about the situation of just right now it's Minneapolis, it could be somewhere else soon, but no one can know for sure if it's going to be where they are.
Yeah, I think on one hand, something to consider is they don't have enough agents to do this everywhere all at once. A lot of the muscle that they rely on locally is the local police departments, sheriff departments, National Guard in certain places. Don't be fooled by the National Guard doing their Hearts and Minds donut tour. they're guarding the Whipple building where there's no nurses, there's no beds, and people are just being kept. There's people, like, there's no record number, no recorded number of how many people are currently detained in custody in the Whipple building in Minneapolis right now. We don't know. And there's no nurses and no beds. So what is the difference between sufficiently advanced neglect and outright malice? I don't know. And I don't think Tim Waltz does either. So they don't have the manpower to do this everywhere. They don't have the manpower to be doing this in 10 cities at once. At least not now. You know, maybe if the culture changes super heinously for some reason somehow. But I'm not really anticipating that anytime, and I can't really work on that, so it's not really something I focus on. I just focus on making the environment and the culture around me better. Right now, you know, you're watching what's happened in Minneapolis, and you're hearing about what's happening in other places if you're paying attention. Border Patrol and BORTAC in Portland are using the artillery, the mortars, against people there. And then it's LAPD is brutalizing people in LA in support of ICE. Denver, I heard, just recently threatened to tear gas some middle schoolers, which is super cool. And so, like, your local police department are the people who are going to be, like, really helping all of this happen. And so I guess the question is just, like, how do you build in anticipation of what they're going to do? And I think part of that is, I think people have to start getting rid of their Ring safety cameras. Ring just joined Flock's like ecosystem, which means Flock sells access to police departments and federal law enforcement, including ICE. All of the Ring data everywhere, every single house has now become a Flock safety camera that the police can access at any time and track you. And you know, I'm sure that corporations, also government corporations, what's the fucking difference? But they track you too, you know, they want to know where you go, they want to know when you go. It makes you sound like Charlie Kelly explaining where the mail goes. and
Yeah.
and it makes you sound so insane, but I think that's part of the thing that everybody can do is just unplug your Ring safety camera. Stop paying for it. Unplug it, disconnect it from everything, make sure it can't turn on. Take it down, ideally, smash it, ideally. You know, that's one thing that everybody can do. If they don't like the Panopticon.
So lastly, I think, like, with an eye to the future, because there's a lot of anticipation, I think, in the air right now. What kind of organizing do you wish that there was that you're not seeing right now? Like, what do you feel like is missing from the landscape of organizing in America at the moment?
Okay, I think too many people are filming and not enough people are knowing how to de-arrest people. Filming, you know, it helps, don't get me wrong. Without everybody filming Alex Pretty get gunned down, you know, we wouldn't have seen all of the angles. And right now, there's so many people in Minneapolis who are just like, probably were apolitical. And so they're like, oh my God, they just like assassinated this guy for no reason. Oh gosh. That's what's different, I think, is a lot of those like people who just are like, oh, this seems controversial, I don't want any part of it, are like, holy shit, that's so wrong, I have to go protest.
Yeah, so that's an effect that filming can be positive.
Yeah, we definitely need the orgs that are existing, need what members that were already part of it to step up and to share the burden of the primary organizers. It makes it more democratic and horizontally like oriented, which is great, doing anarchism. And then I think, yeah, so digesting all of the new faces, because right now is our moment to reach them, right? It sucks, but that just is what it is. People don't want to listen to leftists until something bad happens that proves us right. And then we go, yeah, I'm sorry. I can think of like a couple examples in my own personal life. Diana, Princess of Wales, my personal life. I can think of times when people weren't ready to listen to me. And, you know, like, I knew something about Prince Andrew, and wouldn't you fucking know it, there's a pedophile cartel in charge of everything, and they're doing genocide everywhere.
Yeah, we're all taking our own time to adjust to the revelation that QAnon was just real. It's
so insane.
It's so gotta sit with for a while.
Yeah, like, was Q real? He was just real. But But just know, like, it's so insane that that's not even like an exaggeration of current events. That's just kind of a factual retelling of how we got here.
It's the pizza thing. If you haven't seen it, I don't know, but like the pizza thing is the thing that's driving me absolutely nuts right now.
Like Pizzagate?
I've seen one analysis that suggests that the code of pizza was a real thing that
No.
they used in.
No. 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 Of course it's real. Of course it's real. I'm locking in. Of course. Yeah, it's real. Of course it's real. That's just what life is. But it doesn't have to be that way.
But everyone, I mean, just it's important to say, and horrifying for me to have to be saying this, but do your own research. It's horrible that I'm now saying it, but like...
Jesus Christ. Yeah, so I think that what would really help, the Salute Report is a really helpful framework that already exists. Pre-existing things oftentimes can be easier than starting a thing from scratch. So in that sort of thing, what I want listeners to do is I want listeners to look up the onion of survivability. It is this model. It's how you keep Shrek safe. Shrek is the inside of the onion. He's the very inside, and he's a baby. And there's other layers outside of the onion, like in Shrek kind. And sorry, I'm going to drop the Shrek now. So it's an army concept, how you basically don't die. And the outside of the onion is don't be there. You know, if you know that the enemy is going to be there, don't be there unless you have to be there. If you have to be there, don't be seen by them. If you have to be seen by them, don't be identified as a target by them. If you can't avoid being identified as a target by them, don't be acquired by them. That means don't let them get their gun sight, whatever they're aiming at you. Don't let them aim at you successfully. If you can't avoid that, don't let them hit you. If they hit you, don't let them wound you. If they wound you, don't die. That's basically it, right? And so a lot of those layers are pretty combat focused. So obviously things aren't there yet. And ideally we can avoid them.
Yeah, it's important to see the utility of this as a way to think about many goals that you want. You can make a version of this that's like for someone who does not want to get grabbed by ice, for example, right? Like, rather than shot, it's just like the same beginning thing of like, don't be there. That's exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. So like, for instance, if white people who want to get involved, like me, wants to help people avoid the grocery store where ICE has been snatching people, you can totally go and get groceries for them and drop it off if you have a car. They'll pay you back. It's no big deal. Or even if you don't want to be paid back, it's just you keep them out of harm's way by having them not be there. If it's a thing like dropping their kids off at school, you can be the one to pick them up. It's a lot harder and it radicalizes a lot more people when white people get brutalized. It sucks, but that is what it is. And it's so far worked in Minneapolis. I mean, ultimately, we know ICE isn't going to stop being violent, and we know that they're going to keep escalating the more success we have with keeping our neighbors safe from them. They're going to escalate, right? It's inevitable. We all got to be more like Alex Preddy. We all got to be more like Renee Good. They're involved. They're activated. They put themselves between people, and it's not right to take these people away from their homes. It's not right to take people away from their families. It's not right to stick them in a concentration camp if they've done nothing wrong. It's not right to stick them in a concentration camp if they've done something wrong. It's just not right. And if
True.
that is to mean anything, then we all have to be involved. And if we aren't all involved, then Alex Preddy and Renee Good died for nothing. So, use the onion of survivability, ultimately, with the knowledge that ICE will escalate the more successful you are with nonviolent approaches. It's inevitable and it's unavoidable. You should buy a gun. You should learn how to use it.
I like this idea of, using the onion. I guess you're using it as a heuristic for like what kinds of organizing there need to be. Like when you say about doing groceries or school runs, like for people who would be targeted by ICE. Yeah, that's an interesting approach. Do you have any more examples that work off of that?
Childcare is a big one. Getting food is a big one. Try to think of the different things that people are going to need. If they're trying to stay here the right way, we've heard about ICE targeting people at courtrooms. Escort them to the court. There's this other concept, right? This is a model for organizing for a future that we do not inhabit yet. And I don't mean in the good way. I mean in a response to inevitable escalations by ICE and other unaccountable state forces. There's this concept called pulling security, which any veteran who's listening to this will immediately know. And for those who aren't, who don't possess ball knowledge, basically pulling security is when you and your gaggle of friends who have guns are in a sort of defensive perimeter. There's a 360 field of view around to respond to threats. If a person can't avoid being at a place, you can at least make it incredibly undesirable for your average ICE functionary to want to try it. This does presuppose a lot of things, like there is sufficient organization in place to have competent, trained people who can be professional in that moment and be truly safeguard people with their consent. There requires, those people be known to the community that they want to serve. It requires at least a local government that is willing to look the other way to not enforce gun laws against somebody. It depends on a lot of things. And I don't think that we have all of those pieces yet. But how many of your average untrained fucking wackos who just joined ICE to do a genocide because they thought it sounded fun, or worse, they wanted $50,000, how many of them realistically want to die for it? I think you'll find that the answer is less than you think, less than we're afraid of, and we already outnumber them. So it's a matter right now of getting the skills and the equipment into the hands of the people. And it's kind of no, I'm not going to quote Mao. He's talking about guerrilla warfare, and I'm not going to quote Mao right now. Fish and water. That's all I'm going to say. But you do need the ability for people who take on bigger risks to be able to hide back into society and be hidden. If they get caught doing some of these risky things, their lives are over, even if they don't die. And that takes them out of the fight. And if the state can take enough of us out of the fight, it degrades our capacity to resist them. And if we can't resist them, then they win. So everybody listening to this needs to be okay, if they're not already, with the insurgents in your city. You don't have to be one, but you do have to help them at some point.
That really closely aligns with Margaret Killjoy's recent piece, They'll Sell Us the Lie of Provocateurs. I think in there she points out, the majority, or at least a very near majority, I can't remember if it's 40-something or 50-something % of Americans supported the burning down of an MPD police station after the death of George Floyd because, it was the feeling. That was the feeling people were feeling at the time. The core idea of the piece is that they will try to isolate people as extreme and not representative of the population.
Yeah, I see that reflex online a lot of the times. A lot of people are very afraid. There was some video, I was at my parents' house and they don't have anything to do there for, somebody like me, a gamer. And and so I was back on social media and I was scrolling threads. Horrible place, do not recommend. But I was scrolling there and there was a bunch of videos of people just breaking out some Hilton lights, on the hotel, and people were oh, that's a Fed, that's a Fed, that's a Fed, and people were citing reasons why they knew this person in a 5-second video was definitely a Fed. And it's have you just considered that there's breaking it down numerically, there's more of us than there are of them. So statistically, you're incorrect. That's more than likely somebody that you're Fed jacketing for no reason other than your own vibes and discomfort.
Nah, the only people who do things are actually CIA. They're all Feds. The only way to be a correct leftist is to stay on your computer and post on a website owned by the richest man in the world who is also in the Epstein files.
The the pedophile cartel wants you to believe that the T slur is the worst insult to be labeled in the world, but it's fine. You can just say the T slur. I'll say it right now. Terrorist. I had to look around really quick before I said it to make sure there's none around me. Yeah, I mean, filming, if you believe the White House, filming an ICE agent is terrorism, so who cares what you do? Just don't get caught.
That's a great note to end on, to be honest. We already know that the homework is to learn Spanish. Is there anything generally you want to shout out, or any orgs you want to shout out, or anything?
I will shout out Food Not Bombs. Go there if you want to become a known quantity to people you want to serve, like homeless people. Feeding the homeless is a great way to get involved with immigrant rights orgs. There's a lot of overlap there. You'll find a lot of radical sort of comrades, and if you get to know them, over the course of some time, you'll cultivate trust between yourselves. And if you can cultivate trust between yourselves, who knows what you can do? I would say listen to the episodes from Minneapolis on It Could Happen Here. I thought those were pretty illuminating. Google the survivability onion model. Google the Salute Report or the Huerta Report. Read Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. Read Fry the Brain by John West. You can skip the JFK chapter. And read James Stout's book, Against the State. And be nice to Sophie from Mars. Or else.
Thank you. That's a very important shout out. Thank you.
I got you.
Lovely to have you on the show again. Diana Spencer, Princess of Wales.
I'm giving a royal wave, but you can't see it. Oh, hold on. I'm about to enter a tunnel, though.
I thought that interview was a lot of fun. I'm glad to have gotten a shout out to the Salute Report on Red Planet. As soon as she said it, I was like, shit, this is something that I really wish we'd said already, because it's like really useful stuff for people dealing with this stuff. But yeah, just a really knowledgeable guest. She's told me since that she's had her confirmer training, which was another thing I actually didn't know about that before, and like thought it was really interesting. Yeah, what did you two think?
Yeah, I think it was great. Good little chat. Surprisingly woke from actual Princess Diana.
Well, she was the People's Princess. She was the
That's
People's
why they had to
Democratic
take her out.
Republic of Princess. Yeah. That is why they had to silence her with the CIA coup. She's back and she's armed, which is the crazy thing. It's like in the British context, I think talking to someone who's like doing armed community training, like I feel at once like a bit overwhelmed by the situation that she's in. Like I appreciate the need for anonymity, right? And like I'm also like this is very far away from me, and so I don't know, feels very obviously like yes, I think people should get guns, but I'm not making that decision for myself right now.
There was an interesting bit talking about how some people are still obsessed with gun control as a policy, politically, and
but
that
police
being,
get as much as they want.
That is deeply frustrating, and it is just like you can just see it at this point. Like someone asked me recently on my stream, they were like, I know that things are bad, but do you think I should strap up? And I was like, if you're in America, yeah, probably, but like I don't think that I'm not going to sit there and say to you, you should do X, Y, Z or whatever. You should go out and speak to people. You should go out and speak to ICE, community defense organizations and people that just have a bit of experience in.
Yeah. Also, like I feel like it's a great idea to get comfortable around guns and things, because like even if you're not gonna buy one yourself or anything like that, to go to a range, be around them, hear what they sound like, because it's the same as like I always tell people that they should do some kind of like combat self-defense thing, because you don't want to be like, you don't want the first time you get punched in the face to be like out in the street, and you don't want the first time you hear a gun go off to be out in the street either. because your body and your brain are going to do a whole bunch of things that you are not prepared for. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's like, and you never know how you're going to react, and you could put not just yourself in danger, but a lot of friends as well. So even if you have no intention of ever actually, carrying a gun or doing anything like that, you should at least get very familiar with what they sound like, what it's like to be around them, and and all those kind of things like that. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like it's a hard thing to tell someone, hey, you should go. And like, I mean, it's like it's a thing that carries a lot of weight, I should say, to tell someone, like you should actually go and get one of these and all that kind of stuff. But I think if you go and you spend time around them and you learn these things or whatever, then you'll find out very quickly how you feel about it and what you think is right for you as well.
Mhm.
Because and yeah, I think there's like a lot of people that are like, especially in places in America where it's a lot more accessible just to go out and get a gun and just have one immediately. Um, it's there's like people that are untrained with something like that, which is capable of like instantly killing or maiming a person, can just be a huge liability. Like especially in, like if you're like open carrying or like concealed carrying, even at like a protest, and you're not very confident, what to do or whatever, like something really bad could happen. Like you could just blow your friend's fucking dick off or whatever. So yeah, so you don't, if you do decide to go down under that path, you have to do everything you can to not be a liability, and
Yeah,
not be
absolutely.
a hazard to the people around you. And I don't think that's too much to ask either.
Yeah.
Like
Even living in a country where there are basically no guns in among the like where guns are illegal for people to have. Um like I still want to not engage with a gun discourse as if guns are a hypothetical entity. Like I see too many people do that. It's like
yeah.
guns do exist in the world. And that thing you said about like if the first time that you hear a gunshot is in a crisis situation is so important. Like
Mm,
similarly, Diana meant, plugged again the idea of the survivability onion. I think that's super important for people to familiarize themselves with. Just like before you're in a crisis situation, get the idea in your head that like the best thing you can possibly do is not be there. The best thing after that is be hidden and like all these things. And like this is the way you
mm,
survive because it applies to a lot of things. And just like some people get stupid ideas in their head and they think the response to a crisis like that is to be, you know, brave or do all sorts of crazy stuff. People have crazy reactions, right? You can't even predict it. And it's just, yeah, best to study stuff ahead of time. All sorts of resources out there. Yeah, I think it was a good interview. I'm really happy with that. I'm sure we'll hear from Princess Diana again, though maybe she'll possess another vessel to speak to us. Yeah, that's been Red Planet for this week. The homework I think was read several different things. You can listen back for the specific shout outs. Not be mean to Sophie from Mars was the homework. Um, we are supported by our Patreon. It's the next thing in the notes. Um, Red Planet is a show. It's made possible by the support of our supporters over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/red_planet. The support that we get from our patrons makes it possible for us to do the show at all, to have our wonderful producer Conrad Zimmerman, to do things like make merch. You should check out mercenarycreative.com as well for all of our Red Planet merch, which hopefully we can get some more up soon. We've got some fun ideas. And it also makes it possible for us to do things like the Zad documentary, which Mule and I are working on at the moment, and it's starting to look really, really good, and I'm really excited about it. And I was telling Jay and Issa when I ran into them this week about it as well. And hopefully in future do other documentary projects as well. I really, really want to go to like other communities of intentional living, like the Christiania in Copenhagen. It would be a dream to interview like the Zapatistas, all this sorts of stuff. And it's only possible with the support of our patrons. So please check us out on patreon.com/red_planet and support us there. You can support us at different tiers. And if you have a bunch of money that you want to put towards the project of Red Planet, you can support us on the Sicko tier. And the reward that Sickos get is a personal thank you on the end of every episode, which looks like this. Thank you to Risk Inverse, our Sicko tier Patreon supporter. But if viewers and listeners around the world wanted to hear more from Tim, where would they go?
Well, so you can find me on YouTube and Twitch as Conquest of Dread, or you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as Dread Conquest. If you're into tabletop RPG stuff, you can also look up on Twitter Dark RPG 2000 for a little project I've been working on. Yeah, it's almost done, just in the late phases of playtesting and updating things. It's very cool, dark future dystopian tabletop role-playing game that'll be out soon. We're talking just the other day about maybe doing some kind of bonus stream where we go through, we play a game, which could be fun if anyone's into that. So it'll be a bonus stream for Patreons. What about Mule? What if we wanted to find out more about Mule? Where would we look?
Well, I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to our mod, B-Rat, who doesn't get enough recognition for always throwing the links in there in the chat when we're doing our live show. So thanks very much, B-Rat. Anyway, if you want to find me, you can check me out, linktree.ee/DJ MUEL. I do streaming. It's Monday to Thursday, 6 p.m. UK time, till late. Do about a 6-hour stream most days, covering the news, geopolitics from a anti-imperialist and a communist perspective. And yeah, sometimes we have a little laugh and go off the rails and watch Brass Eye or some shit. So yeah, stop on by. It's fun. And I've also got a YouTube video coming out soon. I should have been writing it this weekend. I'm not going to lie. I've not done any of that. But I'm cracking on with it. It's going to happen soon. If you want to have some more information about that, go to patreon.com/DJMUEL. But Soph, what about you? You got loads of videos, do loads of stuff.
Yes, I am a YouTube video essayist. That's my main job and my main source of income is at Patreon. You can get all my links at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars, including where to send me money and support me. I started out the show by plugging my most recent video, so I should plug it again now. The trans organizing video called They Said on TV You Aren't a Person Anymore. It's about how trans people can organize. It's about how, in my view, the specific ways trans people, especially in the UK, but really anywhere in the Imperial Core, maybe just anywhere, should organize. One of our earliest episodes on Red Planet, we talked to Luna Oi, and she told us about the system in Vietnam where like people form unions for whatever group they're in and make demands of the government like from the group that they're representing, and it's like that is very much the vision that I see for like trans assemblies. Like trans people could be in a trans union essentially, and we could make demands of the government from that position, and even if we were ignored, we would be organized as a bloc to be able to be very loud and make it so we can't be ignored. People check out that video, please. I'm going to be putting out other stuff in a bit. I'm moving on to like more creative stuff. I'm working on new episodes of Monster Men. I've got a project about Ezra Klein I'm working on. And as I move on to that stuff, I'll be promoting that. But like this video is really important to me in the sense that I do believe in its like I believe in the things I'm describing, the strategies, the structures, their capacity to make really serious change towards trans liberation. So please check it out and share it to people and say, hey, check this out. Let's do this thing together. Hey, hey, buddy, someone who lives in my town is also trans. Let's make an assembly happen. Let's make a harm reduction structure happen, or whatever. That's me. All my links are at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. Please support my work. Thank you very much. And that's us. So until next time, which I think will be in 2 weeks, be good to each other. Bye.
Bye.
Right.